I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Jim Dodger.
Here.
Brian Ellis. Dave Papa.
Here.
Brian Holman.
Here.
David Mills.
Here.
Jacob Pack. Adam Sinkman.
Here. Thank you. And I spoke to Jacob on my way here. He said he'd probably be about 10 minutes late, so he should be arriving shortly. Okay, the first item is action on our last meeting, which was the February 2nd, 2023 minutes. Go ahead and request a motion if no one has any issues with the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item is an item for citizen concerns. This is similar to what we hold in our normal planning meetings. So the citizens' concerns would be anything, not only on this agenda, but anything that could be held outside of this agenda. So if there are any citizens here who have concerns, we would like you to come up. There's a microphone, state your name, address, and we'll give you 5 minutes.
Well, I just have a couple questions on the ordinance, a couple of the ordinances. Can I ask those while you are discussing those?
Yes, but you need to come up to the microphone, please.
Right now?
Yes, please.
My name's Jason Miller. I live at 296 Roxlana Hills Drive, Dunbar, West Virginia, 25064. My family has some property held in corporate along the south side of 35 and individually down on 817 in Fraser's Bottom. I had a couple questions as relating to the proposed text amendments to 2024-01 and 2024-02. I'm just trying to figure out what the cause for the change of deleting Class B single-family dwellings is on both C1 and C2 land uses, and any insight as to why Class C wasn't included in that change?
Okay, so I'll go ahead and answer the first question. So Class B really falls into the mobile home category.
Yeah.
And my response to that would be, our ordinances were put in place really a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
And the purpose of this committee and the planning commission is to ensure that our ordinances stay up to date with what is likely the best use for the county. And it's my intention as the applicant to have this updated to remove that from the C1 and C2, as I don't believe that potentially mobile homes falling into what I would consider commercial districts.
Okay, so basically to keep single wides from moving in on C1 areas if it's passed.
That's correct.
Okay, but as far as house sizes to be built, anything over 400 square feet or larger,
That
would be
fall into
permitted.
the Class C.
yeah, if it's below 40 by 20.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from citizens?
Pleasure to speak for you, gentlemen. Jimmy Thaxton, 18,010 Winfield Road, Fraser's Bottom, West Virginia. My question is like somebody has some C1 property and they're going to be developing a business on there, and they want to live on that property while the place is being built for security reasons or anything like that, whether it's C1 or C2, they're not going to be able to do that under this proposed amendment. Is that correct? Because, it takes a long time to build things sometimes.
No, I understand. the
Like if
question.
I had a piece of property and I was going to put a business on it, I'd want to be right there with it, while it was going on for security reasons and protection. And with something like this, I don't think you're going to be able to do that, are you?
So I guess I'll look to the planning department for some clarity on this. And I would look at this as in line with Mr. Thaxton But even from a business perspective, because businesses will put, modular units on properties when they're being constructed. So what would be the,
Yeah, that'd be a temporary permit, and that would come before the board for approval. So you can get a temporary permit to set up a structure like you're talking about.
So that's just for
the
Class
construction.
B. Now, what is Class A dwelling? Is Class A, B, and C, correct? And we're doing B?
Mhm.
Okay, what is Class A? Can you define that for me, please?
yes, it's.
Or can anybody else define that for me? Class A?
It's, give me 1 second. It's right here in front. It's all based upon the size and width of the unit, so just give me 1 second.
Because some campers are 40 feet long.
Class A is longer than, I believe.
Dave, I can go, would you?
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
okay.
from-
Yeah, Class A is a single-family home with a minimum length of 40 feet and a minimum width of 20 feet. That's a Class A.
Okay,
Class B, which I think we just discussed, minimum length of 40 feet and a width of 14 feet.
okay.
So, and a Class C is a single-family home with a minimum of 400 square feet. There's not a length and a width stipulation on a Class C, it's just the square footage size. The Class B is minimum length of 40 feet, width of 14 feet. Class A, minimum length of 40 feet and width of 20 feet.
Okay. And I propose this amendment. Is there a particular reason why we are doing this at this time? I just was curious.
It was, like I mentioned to, I believe it's Mr. Miller, as part of our, roles and within not only the ordinance subcommittee, but also the planning commission, is to, address our ordinances as, they come across us, and this is one that they came across, and I saw it fit that it should be something that should be brought in front of this group for discussion.
Has there ever been a problem with Class B on the C1 or a C2 while this is being done that you know of?
I look at it more from where this county is going versus potentially where it's been. And I mentioned that earlier. A good example, I see you have a WVU tie on, would be the mobile home park that used to sit right beside Mountaineer Field. Sometimes, progress, happens, and certain things need to be addressed to ensure that, visually, things meet criteria that's expected.
So basically, this is trying to limit certain housing and promote business in the bottom line?
C1 and C2 are business
Right,
centered.
right. But putting a house on it would be a residence, correct?
In C1, a Class A
Right.
house could still be there.
Okay. So now you're going to limit that availability to the citizens of Putnam County and ever being able to do that. Is that correct? If this amendment gets passed?
If the planning commission would approve
Okay.
it, then that would be yes.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns from the citizens? Hearing none, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, our first item to discuss tonight is a proposed text amendment, 2024-01. Of course, this being the Ordinance Review Subcommittee, we are just in the discussion phase here tonight to hammer out language that we voted on to go on to the Planning Commission. Mr. Mills, our president of the Putnam County Planning Commission, has proposed a text amendment to C1 Suburban Commercial District, Article 600.02, Permitted Principal Uses. This proposed text amendment would be the deletion of Class B, single-family dwelling, as a permitted principal use in the C1 suburban commercial district. Let's see, on your iPads, it's file number 3. You'll see the list of C1 permitted principal uses. And if you turn to the next page, it's 00, single-family dwelling, Class A. And you see with the strikeout of the Class B. And then it states, see Article 1700. And to reiterate what we spoke of just a moment ago, Class B, single-family dwelling, is a minimum length of 40 feet and a width of 14 feet. So again, this would be the proposed deletion of a Class B as a permitted principal use in a C1. And as the board discusses this, similar to a text amendment that the full planning commission hears, these are facts that need to be determined. The proposed text amendment will protect and promote public health, safety, convenience, moral, and general welfare. The Planning Commission must find that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and ordinances. And if the proposed text amendment is inconsistent, the Planning Commission must find that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated when the comp plan was adopted, and those changes have substantially altered the basic characteristics of the area. So that's a basic outline of the first amendment we're here to discuss tonight.
Thank you, David. Obviously, I was the applicant. I provided some commentary to the public as part of some answers to their questions, so I believe the group understands, or hopefully understands, my thought process behind the why I believe this is applicable. So with that, I would go ahead and, ask if anyone on this ordinance committee has, any thoughts or opinions to the matter.
I have a question, a couple maybe. The way I read this, we're only changing the width, the minimum width, because all the other requirements as far as the pitch of the roof, what the roof surface can be made of, the siding materials, all that remains the same. So we're basically just removing 14-foot width structures and going with a minimum of 20-foot wide structure. Is that fair assessment?
Yeah, the Class A, the ordinance doesn't stipulate between stick-built homes and mobile homes.
Right,
It does Class A, Class B, and Class C, and it's relative to width and length. So the Class A will still remain a permitted principal if this text amendment is adopted. Class A will still remain a permitted principal use in a C1, but the Class B, which is the smaller homes, that would be eliminated as a permitted principal use in a C1. But the Class A and all the stipulations relative to that will remain the same.
So the wording that's in bold on there under the Roman numeral 4, 1700.07, that's already there in the ordinance. I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
It is.
So wouldn't we, since we're deleting and Class B entirely, wouldn't we delete that entire?
Yes, we would.
section?
Yeah, we would.
Okay, because you had that highlighted, you had paragraph 1 highlighted, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I highlighted that just so that it would be clear that we're talking about the 14 feet by
So we're
40
deleting
feet.
that whole
Yeah, that Class B
All right.
would all be wiped. The Class A would remain, but Class B would be deleted.
All right, that's why I was
Yeah.
confused.
So let me just clarify really quickly, because the purpose of this is to remove Class B from section 600 as a permitted use. So Class B being removed would fall out of that section. However, the definitions of Class B, Jim, I think is what you're referring to here, that would
They would
still remain in
That's
section
correct.
1700.
That's correct. Yes, the 1700.07 design standards would still have the Class A, Class B, Class C, but the Class A will just be eliminated from C1 as a permitted principal use.
Class B.
Class B,
B.
yes.
I'm sorry,
Class B.
I'm sorry.
So Jim, to answer your
Misspoke.
question, what you're looking at here, which is section 1700.07, that would remain because that defines what Class B is. And I don't know what other sections Class B is in within our ordinances, but I'm assuming that it would definitely fall within some residential zoning sections. So this would need to be retained.
Well, what threw me off was the word
Sure.
deletion in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just forget all.
Yeah, if you'll see on where it says OO, single-family dwelling, Class A remains and the A and B is stricken. So, yeah, but the Class B language will remain in 1700.07.
Any other questions, comments, or opinions?
I have one question. So basically, in the real world, if you had a 5-acre parcel that was C1, or even C2, then you would be limiting narrow homes 14 feet wide to be able to go there. However, if somebody was developing it, they could always get a temporary permit to put a camper on there for security purposes or
That's
something.
correct.
But it still doesn't take away from and C1, where you could do a lease community. So basically, you could still do a lease community where those type of homes would all be put together in a group, like a manufactured mobile home park, because that would still be allowed in C1. Would that be correct? We're not taking that out.
Well, the way this is proposed in C1, the deletion of Class B from the permitted principal use. So basically, a Class B would not be allowed as a permitted principal use in a C1.
As a single-family home.
Right.
But would that affect the lease community, which is?
Well, that's something for us to knock out here. I would,
Yeah, the way it's written, I think it would. You couldn't have one, or you couldn't have 20. Single-family, 14-foot wide homes.
I certainly see the value in looking at what we're doing, but we might want to also understand where lease communities come into play, because lease communities are important in certain areas to meet a certain need.
Would that fall within the multi-tenant development definition?
no, not a, basically, we're pretty much talking about a single-wide mobile home here with
Well,
this.
yeah, I understand that, but to Dave's question,
Double E.
so the public utility building? Hold on. Oh, yeah, sorry, that's here, I'm looking
Or
at,
DD.
mine could be in order.
See, a lease
Ordinance, yeah.
community is listed under W, and then a multi-tenant development is listed as a double E. So I just want to make sure that we're not negatively affecting lease communities wherever they might need to be.
Where would where would multi-tenant development fall within the ordinance
Now,
here?
could you look and see and read the definition of multi-tenant development?
A multi-tenant development and a multi-family development and a lease community are all three different things. So multi-tenant is like a strip mall. Multi-family is a apartment complex, town home, three or more. And lease community would be like what Dave is referencing for single-wide homes. And what you have to remember is that everything gets a permit. So a lease community goes through a commercial permit review, and it can potentially be permitted. But the individual homes also get a permit. And with this change, a home that's 14 foot
by itself or even as a lease community.
Well, I mean, you're not,
Because the lease community, you could,
Right.
there are places that lease out spots for double wide.
So I'm confused on this because I'm looking at the lease community definition here, and it says under design standards, there shall be three classifications of single-family dwellings established under this zoning ordinance, Class A, Class B, and Class C. The regulations for each are as follows, and they mirror, at least the Class B, what we're looking, or at least what I'm looking at in front of our iPad here. So because that specifically does, lays out what those would be within a lease community, I could be wrong, but I would think that you would still have the ability to do a mobile home lease community park versus just doing a one-off, single family.
It like converges back to the zoning default. So where the lease community is, and it's allowed in different districts. And then it's a lease community in R1 right now, then it would be Class A homes only. If it's a lease community in C1, it would be Class homes A and B right now. If it's in a RR per se, then potentially you have all three options at your fingertips. Now, just because it's up to y'all, but if you change the ordinance, that doesn't mean that's the law. If someone chooses to develop a lease community in a C1 and you change this ordinance, then they have the right to go and ask for a variance for that particular, standard. But there's no guarantee of that.
So help me understand why they would have to ask for a variance if, in my ordinances in front of me could be a couple years old too, but I don't believe we've touched the lease community, on why they would have to request a variance if lease community is still going to fall within C1 and the definitions for Class A, B, and C are still within that lease community. All we're striking is Class B from the single family piece. And that's why we're here, is to hash this out.
Pardon me if I'm wrong about this, but in a lease community, if you have a lease community of Class Bs, those are single-family dwellings, whether they're owned or rented. So if we eliminate the Class B as a permitted principal use in a C1, the lease community would have to consist of Class As, or you would have to apply for a variance to create a lease community that contains Class Bs. Is that correct?
Yeah, because you have to put everything separate. So, let's say that there's a lease community, and I want to put a single wide home in there in the C1. Then I would have to come to the planning office and get a permit and apply for a single family home, manufactured home of that size. And that's how it would be permitted. But if you strike that with that one change, then staff would have the ability to do that approval in-house, right? If you want to make that change, and you want C1s to be able to have these communities with a home that size, then you can change the language.
Well, I don't agree with that interpretation, I agree with yours, but I suggest if you want to make it clear so that it only applies to single-family dwellings, the ones, then I think under OO, what you could do is just put a parenthesis after single-family dwelling and say something like, other than in lease communities.
You could also make a notation a little higher at the W if you wanted, and just says includes A and B.
Either way,
Yeah, well, that's already within the definition, so I believe, Jim, your point.
just put other than in a lease community.
Clarity's obviously important, and that's a big, item for us with a lot of the revisions that we've done to the ordinance. So Dave, very good point that you brought up. So I think, Jim, to your point, that would probably make sense to add that other than lease communities in there. question would be, how would we, how would you word that to make it applicable?
In, under W, where it says lease community, could you say, can include Class A and Class B?
It's already in there, like he says, that, so I think,
Okay, so I think, please correct me, you're referencing the definition, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the definition is in 150, but the only thing you're all proposing to change is in Article 600. So this list comes directly from 600. So 1700 here is for reference, and 150 is the definition of a leased community.
So I'm referencing 1700, though.
yeah, he's looking at the lease community in 1700.
Here's, here's what David's proposing to change, and this is what Mr. Dodd was proposing the other. David was just proposing to come on up a little higher to make like clarification in the C1 only.
In the C1 permitted principal use list, 600.02.
Could we not just say W, lease community, semicolon, C, Article 1700.09? Because it's clearly defined there. And that has Class A, B, and C.
I don't have that in front of me. Is that particular article relative to lease communities in
Yes.
1700? Okay. Yeah, I didn't print that out for my packet here.
I mean, the goal here is, and I think I heard Brian say, interpretation, right? We want to make sure that we're clear and concise, and it helps you guys out.
So basically, what it boils down to is we're still proposing striking Class B as a single-family dwelling in the C1 permitted principal use list, except in a lease community situation where that would still be allowed.
That would be my interpretation of how this is laid out.
I believe that's the right approach.
Okay. So we can,
Lease communities, although we don't do them, they do meet a need that is unmet in so many places. Plus, it does create a great deal of property tax and monies for the counties. So
well,
it is,
as we know from the recent Bowen research, I mean, there's a need there.
absolutely.
So,
And we really don't know what the needs of the next 5 or 10 years are going to show with the economy the way they are. So I certainly support what we're trying to do here, but I would respectfully ask that we carve out item number W with the lease communities and allow that to be as it has been.
So what I would recommend, and we can have additional discussion, would be for us to continue to strike B from double O and make that a recommendation for the Planning Commission, and before our next meeting, which we have some time, let's make sure that that by striking B from double O, it doesn't remove it from the lease community.
Well, and I think, again, I suggest the way to make that clear is after the word dwelling, before the semicolon, you just put parentheses there, other than in a leased community, close parentheses. Be done with it. That makes it clear that that only applies to one and not to single-family dwellings, A, B, and C, that might be up in leased community.
I would add that as a part of my motion, but still, let's make sure that we hash that out with, Larry before our next planning meeting to ensure that we're crafting it correctly.
yeah, well, I'll draft this up and present it, to you guys to look at, to make sure we're all on the same page with the language prior to presenting it to the full Planning Commission for review. But I mean, I think we're all on the same page.
Are there any other questions from any committee members? Would someone like to make that recommendation as a motion? Is there a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead to number 2, Dave.
Yeah, okay, the next one is a very similar discussion. It's number 4 on your iPad. This is, Mr. Mills has proposed a text amendment to C2, High Density Commercial District. And again, it's Article 650.04, Special Permit Uses, which would be the deletion of a Class B single-family dwelling as a special permit use in the C2 high-density commercial district. So just like the discussion we just had relative to permitted principal use in a C1, this is a special permit use in a C2, the same process, deletion of the Class B.
You wouldn't have to worry about these communities because they're not allowed currently as a special permit. Right?
Correct. Does anyone have any opinions on this? This one looks like it's a little bit more cut and dry than C1. So my recommendation would be to strike B from the C2 special permitted use. Someone put that in motion? Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Denise, please make the record note that Commissioner Ellis and Jacob Pack are here. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on to 03. If so, that is file number 5 on your iPads. Proposed text amendment 2024-03. Mr. Mills, the president of the Planning Commission, has proposed a text amendment to Article 150.02, which is definition of terms, to add the definition of indoor shooting range. I will read the definition that we have preliminarily fashioned for this meeting. Indoor shooting range, an indoor facility designed and operated where people may participate in supervised recreation, competition, skill development, and training with firearms, archery equipment, and/or air guns, along with other related activities such as the sale of legal firearms, legal ammunition, targets, and other related items. Again, the same criteria relative to the other text amendments applies here for your discussion purposes.
Dave, I would ask, and if the committee is okay, I think it would probably be appropriate to address 2024-04 and 2024-05 in terms of what the proposals are, because these all kind of work in sync with each other. And
Okay.
if we're okay moving forward, we can address each item independently.
So go ahead and read 04 and 05?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good. Okay, 2024-04. Again, keeping in mind the proposed addition of the definition of indoor shooting range. This is, Mr. Mills has proposed a text amendment to 150.02 definition of terms with the addition to an existing definition, which is titled recreation, commercial. And recreation commercial is as follows. Commercial recreation is land or facilities operated as a business and which is open to the public for a fee or membership. That's proposed to be added, the or membership, as you can see I hope everybody's looking at file number 5 on their iPads. I'm sorry, file number 6. File number 6 on their iPads. You can see the red text that is highlighted are the proposed additions to the existing recreation commercial definition. So let me start over there, make that clear. Commercial recreation is land or facilities operated as a business in which is open to the public for a fee or membership that shall include, but is not limited to, water parks, rollerblade rental, billiard parlors, video amusement arcades, ski areas, pay-to-play athletic fields, golf courses, miniature golf courses, driving ranges, indoor shooting ranges, ice skating rinks, batting cages, or swimming pools. So I will come back to that after I read the proposition for 2024-05, and that is file number 7 on your iPad. Again, in keeping with this same theme, Mr. Mills has requested a text amendment to Article 1700.17, requirements for unique land uses, which is the addition of S, commercial recreation or sports facility, including indoor shooting ranges. So if you'll look down on, if you go to the next page, you'll see Article 1700.17 S, commercial recreation for sports facility, including indoor shooting ranges. This is part of the ordinance where we outline stipulations relative to unique land uses, and an indoor shooting range would most certainly be a unique land use. So these are some stipulations that we have preliminarily discussed for the purpose of this meeting tonight. Indoor shooting range. Indoor shooting range owners, operators are responsible to apply for and receive all required licenses and/or permits and must be compliant with all applicable federal, state, and county laws, rules, policies, acts, and/or ordinances regulating the design and operation of such facilities. Indoor shooting range design criteria must meet or exceed all engineering and operational guidelines outlined by the United States Department of Energy, DOE, Office of Health, Safety, and Security, in their range design criteria document relative to such facilities. Indoor shooting range design criteria must also meet or exceed all applicable engineering and operational requirements mandated by federal, state, and county agencies regulating the design and operation of such facilities, including but not limited to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Occupational Health and Safety Administration, or OSHA, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, aka NIOSH, the West Virginia Department of Natural Resources, Putnam County Health Department, West Virginia State Fire Marshal's Office, and all other applicable governmental and/or legal regulatory agencies, acts, and policies relative to such facilities. So,
Okay, thank you, Dave. I just figured it was better to
Yeah.
keep these together than
they do go
address,
together.
each of them one by one. So let's go ahead and go back to proposed amendment PDF number 5. So the definition for indoor shooting range, and to provide this group just a little bit of kind of where we've come from to why this is coming in front of us. So there was an individual who showed interest in potentially putting an indoor shooting range within a C2 zoned area in Putnam County. And based upon the existing definition that we have in place currently, it was my opinion and others that the indoor shooting range would be allowed. However, because of the sensitivity of a shooting range, it was my opinion that we probably just need to make this very clear. and concise, so it couldn't be open for, call it public debate. So that's the reason why the indoor shooting range is being added into the definition. Then obviously, everything else that follows is because of us further defining and trying to make it right and safe. So those are my comments. The draft of this definition comes from various forms, trying to keep it open to not only, you know, the acts of shooting, but also the potential for retail sales to occur at the facility as well.
Is it only permitted in C2?
So this, I would need to check, but I believe,
Yeah, the recreation commercial, that would be a C2. Recreation commercial is a permitted principal use in C2. And if you add the indoor shooting range definition to 150, then you have the definition in the zoning ordinance. Now, if you add indoor shooting range to recreation commercial, then that makes it a permitted principal use in a C2.
I noticed the examples of the gun club and FMC. Why were those added?
the Putnam County Gun Club and FMC. So those are applicable to outdoor shooting ranges. So what I would just say, to be of record, at some point, we will need to likely further define shooting ranges, right? Because this is specific to indoor. There's nothing on the docket, so at some point in the future, this group will need to come together to basically go through the same motions for the outdoor piece as we're going through for the indoor piece.
Well, and the reason I ask is, you know, FMC is located in an R2 district, according to the map. Do you know the limitations of where outdoor shooting ranges are permitted?
So it's currently not defined within our ordinances. Dave and I spoke beforehand. That was grandfathered. It was there before the ordinances were put in place, and the same thing with, I believe, Putnam County Gun Club as well.
Now realized that commercial recreation definition is also a permitted principal use in a C1 as well as a C2. So if we add that definition to 150.02, and then if we include indoor shooting range in the commercial recreation definition, then an indoor shooting range becomes a permitted principal use in a C1 and a C2.
Well, that's why I looked at the other page and noticed that was permitted in C1 as well.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to clarify, and also was curious why it stopped at C2. While it's permitted, I understand now that it's grandfathered in an R2 district, and I would personally
That
believe-
facility was grandfathered, not that
Yeah.
outdoor shooting ranges are, so.
but would personally think that that's an even safer, more confined area to do shooting. So I don't know why it would have to stop at C2, but also to clarify, it is listed in both, and so we might need to expand it or clarify it or limit it, whatever you all thought. But
Any other thoughts? Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Mills, can I expand
Yes.
on the? I would like to comment upon the including the indoor shooting range in the commercial, in the definition of commercial recreation. If we do that, then that is automatically an allowed use in a C1 or C2. Now, of course, the engineering still has to come through our office and all of that, but if someone comes in and applies to do a indoor shooting range, and if we pass this amendment, in a C1 or C2, I mean, there's no public input, there's no anything like that. So, again, this is my opinion. I know I don't have a vote here, but I feel compelled to express my opinion, if you guys will bear with me for a minute on this. It is my opinion that an indoor shooting range may not be compatible with all C1 and C2 high-density, or C1 and C2 commercial districts. and neighboring communities. The term indoor shooting range is, if the term indoor shooting range is added to the existing recreational commercial definition as found in Article 150, there will be no review process available to determine if the use is compatible with the proposed location and neighboring community, since commercial recreation, is a permitted principal use in C1 and C2 commercial districts. I would just ask the committee to consider the option of making an indoor shooting range a special permit use in a C1 and a C2, as opposed to including it in the recreation commercial, just so each site, proposed site, could be evaluated on its own merits. In my opinion, I feel it's reasonable and responsible that this approach might be to explore the following. If we create the indoor shooting range definition, which we've just discussed, and then we request the amendment to add indoor shooting range as a special permit use in C1 and C2, then the BZA would have the responsibility to review each indoor shooting range application and preliminary site plan to determine if the proposed use is compatible with the selected location and neighboring community. This would also allow budding landowners to make their voices heard relative to the proposed introduction of an indoor shooting range to their community. Could be oftentimes C1s and C2s abut right up to residential areas, I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I've belonged to 2 indoor shooting ranges, and I would love it if we had one. But I'm sorry, I don't think that they are appropriate for any and all C1 and or C2 properties. I think they should be reviewed as a special permit use, quite frankly, and it would give the BZA an opportunity to determine if the site was proper, and would also give abutting landowners the opportunity to speak to the introduction of that use in their community. That's my speech.
Can I ask a question?
I totally respect your opinion, but I just think it should be a special permit.
No, I appreciate your thoughts. Is there permitted or special permit for an outdoor shooting range currently?
No.
Yeah, and what I would just kind of echo what I said earlier on the outdoor shooting ranges, that isn't an item that's here today, so it can't be on the agenda, but it is something that we will need to address at some point in the future within the ordinances, because if we're clearly defining indoor, then outdoor is going to need to be added as well.
What I'm looking at right now is if we weren't addressing this today at all, it appears like the ordinance already permitted to me, because it's already a type of, what's it worded as, recreational?
Commercial recreation.
So right now, the way I see it, it would already be permitted. You're just defining it, what it already is, or suggesting that we define what it already is in order to make it more clarity for folks that would be willing, would possibly be wanting to start one. And as far as it going back to the BZA, my thought is it goes back to other stuff that we had tried to alleviate some of the burden of the BZA from them. Because if I'm on I'm not sure, but I would think that they would want to see site plans, engineering work done, and all of that, and that's a lot of money to pay.
No, not anymore. That's been stricken.
Yeah.
All the BZA reviews now is a simple site plan.
They just need okay, well, that takes that argument off. But I do think it definitely does slow down the process.
Well, just speaking from, again, I don't want to be argumentative, but if I'm in an R1 community and I'm abutting a C1 or a C2 and somebody wants to put in an indoor range, half the neighborhood may be ecstatic and half the neighborhood may be very upset.
I would agree with that. especially during the type of commercial that butts, is the blending commercial to abut residential. But in high density, I mean, if
There's
you're-
a lot
if
of
you're living near
C2s.
If you're living near a high density commercial area, I mean, whether it's a Walmart or a shooting range or whatever it is, there's going to be large traffic areas there. The only concern that I can see about an indoor shooting range versus an indoor golf course is you're hoping a stray bullet doesn't get out, or maybe noise. There's going to be noise no matter what, and the key is to make sure that those are engineered for safety.
And one thing I'd make a comment on, item 2, and we're not to the third, requested amendment, which is under S, that, and this is why I forwarded this document to the group today, is that the U.S. Department of Energy, their regs and requirements, which is referenced to be added within here, is pretty detailed in terms of noise.
It is.
When you can have noise, the distance in terms of noise checks, I think up to a quarter mile away.
Yeah.
Within that document. So 100% agree with everything that's been noted here, that this is going to be a hot topic item, right? Because it's
Right.
a shooting range, right? And, abutting potentially an R1 or an R2, I would believe that people would have or could have potential issues, but at the same time, we've seen it with other things that have come across here, for C1s or C2 that abut, it's going to be a warehouse, or to Jacob's point, another retail or industrial type of property, residents are going to voice their opinions, against.
So if I could add one thing. I've always tried to look at what makes things more streamlined and keep things out of the special permit section, because when you do that, then one person might be approved and one person might not be. The one thing that I will tell you, I've never had the opportunity to shoot at an indoor shooting range. However, I've traveled outside of West Virginia, and you're into very populated areas, and they'll say, well, there's a shooting range. And you look at it and you think, you're kidding me. And with the amount of criteria on here, that, just two local guys aren't going to decide to do a shooting range. I mean, I can't imagine anybody wanting to do an indoor shooting range. But
Yeah, very expensive.
I do believe, although I've never been in one, I find it hard to believe that it's, other than what's the signage on the building, that anybody locally is going to know what's happening with all the requirements here. So my vote, not my vote, but my perspective is we all have a difference we have different ideas based on where we've been and what we've been allowed to achieve in our lives. I want to go to an indoor shooting range, but I just don't think it's going to have any impact on the locale, whether it's in C1 or C2, and anything that we can keep from subcommittee having to go through the special permit process that makes things easier and more straightforward and more fair to anyone who would go in and request. I think that shall always be, at least it's always my concern.
I'd like to also add that probably 2 years ago, the church camp on South Poplar Fork wanted to put in a gun range. And there was an outcry about that. It did abut some neighborhoods where, again, where would a better place be than a 4-H camp? But again, it did abut against residential neighborhoods, and it was shot down.
It was outdoor.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yes, but this is an indoor. I can't help to think that there's a lot of people that, of course, a lot of people like guns, a lot of people don't like guns. But I do agree with David that, again, you don't want to, like Dave said, you don't want to give one the okay and then the other not. But at the same time, I think everything needs to be looked at. Where is it at? And I'm like you guys, that's an expense that most people in this area aren't going to do.
I have been to an indoor range recently, as a matter of fact, but the one down in Huntington on Fifth Street exit, Bear Arms. And that was actually, that building was built as a restaurant. That's been heavily modified to put the range in. And I'm kind of torn between whether I agree with, I do agree that with all the requirements that we've listed in here, they have to comply with, no one's gonna be able to build an indoor range without putting in a lot of money, a lot of, you know, and it's gonna be safe, it's gonna be quiet, et cetera. But by the same token, I'm wondering, with that restaurant now being converted into an indoor range, it does butt up right against a residential community, right behind it there's a bunch of houses, not a bunch, but several houses. I wonder how those people feel. I'd like to find out between now and the time this comes up on the agenda, if we could maybe reach out to a couple of those people, and those people might, hey, fine, we don't even know it's here. I mean, if that's the case, you know, I'd feel better about, you know, not requiring any special permit.
I have a question about, because Commissioner Commissioner Ellis spoke about, I remember back a couple of years ago when they were looking at doing the outdoor range. To the best of my knowledge, they never actually submitted an application for that, did they? That was just some talk in the community and folks came out to talk about it. So yeah, it just got dropped and we've never actually had that conversation.
Right. There was a large outcry.
And whichever way we fall on this, yeah, you know, you take a step back and, you know, address the item that we're looking at is, today, you could probably apply for this and it go in. You could argue it probably either ways, but I've talked to some people I trust and they believe it would be a yes. So, you know, the goal here, again, is clarity within our ordinances. Safety, obviously, and I've combed through the documents that Dave and his group put together, and they spent a lot of time. I believe that the way that it is written, including, you know, definition as with all the requirements, different state agencies, county and federal, that the safety would not be an issue, that, you know, that the hurdles to overcome are pretty big. I try to, when I was reading those, specifically the DOE one, I try to put it through a residential lens. If I'm a resident, I'm opposed to this, doing my due diligence, and I read that, how would I feel? And even though I'm for this, I came back to, okay, I believe that these requirements do provide that additional layer of safety if there was anything, you know, from a budding standpoint. So does anyone have any additional comments?
Should we explore outdoor shooting ranges as well?
I would say yes, we will, but I would prefer to address this today. The outdoor will need to be explored, but because of, you know,
It's, yeah,
posting.
engineering and all that would be completely different, obviously, so.
My personal opinion about that, just to put out there, I'm more comfortable with an indoor range around people than I am an outdoor.
I am too, that's why I was asking why.
Safety and noise and
Yeah.
all of that.
And, you know, not to get down the outdoor, you know, rabbit hole, but, you know, Dave and I have spoken about outdoor, you know, R1s, you know, residential, commercial probably isn't applicable, right? You're talking rural, potentially unzoned areas where that might fall, but that's something that's going to require an additional group huddle and due diligence that's outside of that.
Yeah, the only issue I see is it feels a little backwards to do this before outdoor, because I feel the approach here and these specifically are going to be safer, noise control, all those things are a benefit for people who like to shoot. You know, I think of FMC, I mean, it's right next to a large, wealthy neighborhood. That hasn't deterred them, but it's also, you know, I would think about that moving in. But no, so I'm not saying like, I want to change anything. I just would encourage us to put some parameters around that as well, just to make sure we have something.
And I live close to an outdoor range, the City of Hurricane's new range across the I-64 is right now.
Oh, yeah.
So you can
police
hear
range.
it, it's not really a nuisance, but that's, you know, a topic for a different day, so. To keep things moving, does anyone have an opinion in terms of indoor shooting range being included within the definition of commercial, recreational, or sports facility?
Let me make one comment, please. So we all are familiar with Tays Valley. So if somebody, instead of Target, maybe there was a section in that shopping plaza, and somebody came in and said they want to do an indoor range for people who lived in Putnam County. And because I like guns, I would be excited. I would think I would get to go. And if I knew that whoever did one was going to spend a lot of money making sure all these people met those requirements, because nobody in this room is smart enough or certified enough to be able to set the requirements. Obviously, it's pretty thorough. So if somebody went in there, and if the facts were, which I don't know the facts, because I've never shot in one, but the ones I stood in the parking lot when we went out and ate, and somebody said that's a shooting range, and there was a lot of cars there in the evening because it was dinner time. People were enjoying it, people were there. I didn't hear any shots, I didn't hear anything, and I would assume that's the safest place other than an outdoor range, because I don't think that would be safe. Then I would say if I knew that I knew they had to meet a whole bunch of criteria to provide a safe place, and really, if I felt pretty confident that the only people who knew that was there were the people utilizing it because of the signage, and they couldn't hear, see, or other than people walking in with their cases of guns, probably pistols or whatever that would be, I would be consistent with making a motion that with all the requirements in place, I think I would like to see one in the Tays Valley area, because I think I would use it if they had leagues and different things like that, because it is one more recreational event that people could share with their families or their friends, and there's probably nothing wrong with learning a little self-defense in the world we're in.
Self-defense and gun safety. And gun safety.
And gun safety, yes.
I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, standing in the parking lot of Bear Arms and Pistol, you cannot hear the rounds going on.
I'll take it a
Now,
step
granted,
further.
The restaurant is between you and the indoor range.
Even from inside though.
That's
I've
what I
been
was
there
gonna
too.
say.
You can hear it,
You
but
can
it's
hear
not
it,
really
it's
that
only
loud.
like a
Yeah,
clunk or something, just very dull, very low. Outside, you can't hear it at all.
that's right. In the store, or even eating a hamburger, they have great hamburgers, but you can, it's very quiet in there.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate everyone's comments, feedbacks. I will stand by my recommendation on proposed text amendment 2024-03 to add indoor shooting range within the commercial, recreational, or sports facility within the permitted principal uses. Would someone like to make a motion?
I think you just did.
I would like to make a motion that we accept it, because I feel comfortable with the requirements that are there. I believe it would be safety, and it's something that I personally think I could enjoy doing.
All right.
You said.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So the next item would be, let me see if I can navigate here.
So, David, let me just clarify that we're good with to move forward with the definition that we have here for 2024-03, to put that forward to the entire planning commission, as well as including that in commercial recreation, which would then become a permitted principal use in C1 and C2, correct?
Dave, was that your intended?
Okay. And we're good, okay, and we're good with the unique land use of this criteria that we've come up with from our research. Article 1700.17. So basically, everything we've got roughed out here, we will put forward to the full planning commission in text amendments. Correct?
Dave, was that your intention?
Yes, that would be my intention.
So, yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, so that covers the items on the agenda.
This wasn't an agenda item, but this is something that has came up since the agenda was published. This is also a potential text amendment. Again, this is new business, but I need to get your all's input as to how to proceed forward with this. There is a interest in a potential addition of heavy equipment sales and service to Article 800.02 as a permitted principal use in an I-1 light industrial district. The existing definition of heavy equipment sales and service, as it is currently exists in 150.02 definition of terms, is the retail or wholesale or rental of heavy equipment such as backhoes, bulldozers, cranes, excavators, construction equipment, farm equipment, and similar equipment, along with incidental service or maintenance. Oddly enough, heavy equipment sales and service is a permitted principal use in a C2. However, it is not a permitted principal use in an I1, which is light industrial district, which seems odd. So would this committee like to hear a proposed text amendment relative to adding heavy equipment sales and service as a permitted principal use in I1? Or is that something that you feel comfortable with? Go ahead and just putting forward to the entire planning commission at the next meeting when we go over all these others we've just talked about.
My opinion is if it's already in C1, correct?
It's in C2.
C2, then I would be okay with it going directly to the
For
planning
some reason, it's
commission.
not in an I1, but
Yeah, we're not pressing it further. We're going
Yeah.
backwards from the
This
permitted
is-
uses,
it
so
should be-
I feel like that would be a pretty.
so someone can make a motion, or
I'll go ahead and make a motion to present that text amendment to the planning commission at our
Okay.
next scheduled meeting.
okay,
A
great.
second.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then, Dave, under new business, let's go ahead and make a note that we need to get on an agenda for the ordinance to address outdoor shooting ranges as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I've made a note of that. Okay, well, will you want to do that, just present the outdoor text amendments to the planning commission, or you think we should come back here to this subcommittee to bang out the outdoor?
I think we should be here. With it
Okay.
being shooting range, this group needs to be
Okay.
involved.
So we'll proceed with indoor to the full planning commission, and then we'll come back here to this committee for outdoor.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Also in new business, while I have the floor here, Thursday, February 22nd, that meeting, as you probably all realize, has been canceled because we do not have an agenda item. The next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 28th at 6. And for your calendars, please note that April's regularly scheduled planning commission meeting has been moved from Thursday, April 25th to Wednesday, April 17th at 6, and that is due to a courtroom scheduling conflict due to an election function. So again, the meeting that was scheduled for Thursday, April 25th is now scheduled for Wednesday, April 17th at 6.
Dave, you're noting 6. Did we move, I thought we moved the meeting times to 5:30, or am I just getting that confused with this ordinance?
Well, we did this one, this committee, but
Okay.
the bylaws were 6.
It's 6?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wanted clarity on that.
So the next regular planning commission meeting is March 28th.
Yes, Thursday, March 28th at 6. I just wanted to alert everybody of April so you can go ahead and get it on your calendar so you can be aware that that is a change due to election scheduling here for the courtroom.
Any unfinished business?
That's it for me.
Okay, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
No, you're fine.